Alrighty, hello there. Welcome back. This is episode 3, technically episode 4, depending on how you count. So last episode went through, talked about how we're going to focus specifically on the Pomodoro bar, and then I said I was going to work on the timer this week, and I will show you a little bit of what I got done. Some change of plans have happened, but before we begin, I really wanted to shout out Early Bird. Thank you so much for watching these videos. You've been leaving a comment, and I have noticed, and I have read through all of them. I haven't responded to your comments, but I want to say that I appreciate you. Thank you so much for watching and for all of your comments. I want to hear more about what you have to say about these videos and these ideas. So please let me know what you think of these ideas and the direction you'd like to see this project go, because I do think that your input is valued. So thank you so much. And so let's start with what I did. Last week, we discussed making sessions. We were able to actually get something working, and it was great. It felt great. I actually did some programming and did some things. What I'm showing you here is detailed user stories for the idea of taking a timer. So I really spent some time on this. I was like, okay, I want to actually sit down and think through all the aspects of the timer. I want it to be independent of the logs and all that system. And so I really started going through and thinking about how this timer is going to work, having a start time, duration, status, like connecting it to the user and the status idea. You almost really don't even need to connect to the user, but as I thought more and more about this, I actually got some other people's opinions on it. I talked to Brian, which is where some of these ideas came from, and we were really talking, and I was debating with him a little bit on like, okay, do you need like he was saying based on our designs previously that having the timer down here with the reset button was actually distracting him away from what he wanted. So having basically, because you don't need to change the timer every single thing, you should really be setting it to, if you're using the Pomodoro technique, a 25-minute focus timer and then a 5-minute break timer, right? And then be able to have that hidden away so you don't have to see it all the time because you're not changing it all the time. So I was like, oh, that's a really good idea. So that kind of got me started on thinking about how I want to implement the timer, what triggers the timer, and really I got a chance to step back and think about the project as a whole on how I want to use the project and what I want to get out of it. And I realized that I might have gotten a little bit too connected to this idea of a timer. And I'll kind of explain as we step back now from, we went really close into last week, like actually dealing with these small things, because I just wanted to start programming and start working on it. But I realized that was just a little bit too fast, because while I will still be using what I built last week, I realized that I need to spend more time thinking about and actually working with the ideas and concepts before I start taking them directly to the programming floor. So this is 2 prototypes. These are screenshots, obviously, of this is, and I've shown this in the past. This is the Pomodoro bar. I'm not going to go in depth explaining. If you want to see more depth and explanation, check out the previous episodes. So the idea of the timer was kind of this thing right here with a reset, and the timer would go off once you reach this like 1 minute mark or whatever you set the timer to. And then you can reset the timer and still have it part of a session. And as we discussed last time, and this is the idea that I was toying with and why I really spent some time this week thinking about it, is what triggers the timer and how does that really affect the user? Like, how are you going to like interact with this timer? Because I wanted the timer to be separate from these, like the idea of logs, of having a productive cycle and then having a break cycle. So what I came up with, and I started thinking about this because I use both of these programs together. So this one on the top is more of my session, like basically start to finish for the day, focus time, break time, and you can kind of get an idea of like, okay, I had really good like focus, and then there was like this, for example, was mistyped, but whatever, this is when I got lunch. So, but what's interesting is if you notice, and you might have caught on to this, 35 minutes, 35 minutes, 16 minutes, 16 minutes. And this was counted in the 17 minutes. And this is right here is 7 minutes long. And then you have 15 minutes down here. And then this 1 hour and 30 minutes was broken up over the course of these guys. So what actually I realized is that productivity timer, like, yes, do I want it to be manually controlled? But here's the thing, and this is the thing that kind of like changed how I wanted to redesign this whole project. Productivity time should be associated with a specific task. It shouldn't be vague because I want clarity on what I'm doing with this productive time. And then I realized there's also like a kind of a flaw with using both of these tools together. Oh, I realized that we're missing music. Go back to this. So the idea here is that the new direction of this app with our music now is going to be that productive time only happens when you're working on a specific task, when this timer is going on for a task, which kind of now like extrapolates out, like we can do so much with this now. And I'll explain what we can do with it and why I'm so excited about this new direction. So sessions, as we created them last time, is just create a session and end a session. And that's all we need sessions to be right now. We can add all this junk to it later. But what determines, now if we get rid of this productive/break button, what determines if we're being productive? Well, that's working on a task. That's where this comes in. So instead of having to manually press productive and break, whenever you are working on a task that you've named, that is considered productive time. And then whenever you're in between those tasks, or if you're taking a break, that would just be considered untracked time, or I don't want to call it dead time. I feel like transition, I feel like people underestimate how much time they spend in between items on a list. And I realized this like recently, once I started playing with this new idea, I realized that like, this is what I do pretty much every morning, but I realized how much time I'm spending in between each of these things. Like when are you most likely to go on your phone in between tasks? When are you most likely to be distracted by an email or something like that, right? In between, like once you finish and before you start something. So that's where I'm like, okay, this is like a new clarity on this type of stuff. So what does this change and where can I take this? So one of the things is that this task idea, the ToDoRunner bar, which I haven't really shown off a lot. The ToDoRunner bar is basically a splits timer for tasks. So you create your task, you give an estimate of how long you think it's going to take, and then you track how long it actually took you to do it. So you can see this one took 40% longer than I estimated, and this because today's Saturday and I can actually like really chill. And I spent a lot more time today on design work and stuff like that. So that's kind of where this is an older program that I did, which is literally just tasks are going to be, this is what I'm going to consider a task type, and this is kind of like a prequel of what we're going to be doing, is we'll be able to create task types, say discussion, because my school has discussion posts. And so I have an estimate for how long I think it's going to take, how long it actually took, and then an offset for that. And then you can see like a day. So you can see if I had 3 discussions due this week, and then this day, and then 2 discussions on this day, and so on and so forth, right? So now I can create, so these are individual tasks, which will be inside of lists. This entire thing is a task type. What's cool about this is that because we're doing the same task over and over again, we can start to take information from that and from our task trials. Like, for example, this is a distribution of how long discussion posts take me on average. So 50% of the time, it takes me about 25 minutes or so or less. And then you can see like there's occasional times where it takes 45 minutes. So we get cool like information that we can gather from this. But we can also take that average and take some of these stats and start predicting how long the entire list will take us. Because if we create a list, and we can even use the estimated time, or we can use how long it's taken us on average for this task type and start predicting how long the entire list is going to take us. So we can do that with like some math and crap. So this is kind of like this is all from a spreadsheet that I was using and kind of where the idea for the ToDoRunner and the splits timer came from. So for example, like this is a to-do list for 2 reading assignments this week. It's guessing that it'll take me about an hour and a half to complete both of those assignments. It actually took me 45 minutes. This is how much percentage of the overall week's worth of work it's worth, and then how much is done. So I can see like, if I only do, let's see, what's a good example? So for example, this is like a while ago. Like I have not updated this since November of this time. So for example, I had one assignment that was due. It was saying that 80% of the time I can do it in an hour and a half or less. It didn't actually complete it, didn't actually add it to the thing. So you can see that 25% of the overall week's worth of work and this list's worth of work is with the assignments. And then the done so far percent does not have that, so we're only 60% done this list. So we can do like crazy, like interesting things with this. So this is kind of the idea, is going to be combining these two things together. And this is why I'm redesigning a little bit. I'm going to spend some time this week and next week really kind of squaring away the design elements for this, because I think this is the direction that this needs to go, because this is how I want to use it. And I see there's so much value in it. And it's kind of interesting because way back when, and I showed this in like the first video, I think, was this old thing from like 3 or 4 years ago that I built. It was literally just a single bar that was way too big. I can actually pull it up. This guy. So you can see this is designed for a much larger screen. Right here, this is, let me see if I turn it down to like 5. So you can see right here, out of the entire bar, this will give like just a simple progress bar. So you can see that it will fill up the percentage of how long it's done. And then you have this little timer down here that is our Pomodoro timer. And you can see, you can set that here. So you can see this is kind of like where everything started. And notice how these things are together. And they were originally designed to be the same size so that you could see how long something was taking you, how long you should be compared to the time. So if you had like 10 discussion posts that you had to like do comments on, and you said it would take you 10 minutes, then you should be doing one each minute, and you would be able to see and pace yourself. So that was kind of the idea way back when. And then I took those things apart, and now I'm going to marry them back together, because they really, I understand why I took them apart, but at the same time, it's like there's so much more value to having them together. So the idea is that we'll be able to have sessions. So sessions now will be associated with lists, and these ideas are going to be married a little bit more. We'll be able to derive session stats, which, opening up this guy again, this guy, our session timer. So now sessions are also going to be incorporated directly with this design. We're going too fast. This guy. Okay, so sessions, see how we have our monthly counter? Look, there's our first edition of the, it's really hard to tell. It is literally just a 100%, and this is the idea that these 4 seconds, and it's in productive mode, and then I press this, now we're in break mode or whatever, and so you get a productivity percent. That's like the first edition of this. So all of this stuff is kind of like early versions of what I want. Like, so I've had these ideas for a while, it's just being able to iterate on them and making them work. So now our sessions, we can have an estimate of how long the session is going to take us based on the tasks in the session. And if we do task types and stuff, we'll be able to say, okay, reading on average, and these are just filler numbers, on average would take us like 5 minutes. Quiz would take us on average 10 minutes or something like that. And then we can say like, okay, it's gonna like, and for this list, I said like it would take 3 hours. And then we can say like, okay, and we can derive that 3 hours from this list of activities and the task types that we've created for them. Then we can actually track specifically with our productive time here, the actual task. Oh, and going back to, I said there was going to be a conflict here, and part of the reason why I like this new direction more is the conflict arises when you use the basic Pomodoro technique, but then you have tasks like this. So for example, say I'm doing 25 minutes focus work with a 5-minute break. Say I do a 15 to 20 minute task, and then I have 5 to 10 minutes left of focus work. So you can either start another task and get halfway through it and either take a break, or you can take a break early, or you can do like a new task or something, or you would just do, and which I found myself doing, is doing filler productivity work, which is low priority crap that really is just busy work that you shouldn't be doing. Because really, I want this to force you to say, the only productive times is the things that you've said you're going to work on, the things on your to-do list. If you're spending productive time, it should be clarity. You should have like the clarity to know exactly, like if you're working on email, you should be creating a list in your thing that says email, and then having that tracked productively, right? So it's gonna force you to like not end up with this situation where you don't know what you're working on, which I think is just gonna be great. So we'll be able to edit tasks. This is kind of like, we can have that focus percentage. I kind of am thinking I might remove the idea of a focus percentage, because I think people will see that number and focus on it and be like, oh, this is the number I need to look at to see how good I'm doing. Like, yes, but also that's not the point. That's really more of like just a fun number that we can derive from this information. So I might get rid of focus percentage because it's not wholly accurate. We can do total time so far, the number of tasks completed so far, and the money earned based on how much time we've spent. And this can all be associated with the project. So now we've got this new identity structure here, and I'm gonna walk through this a little bit. So we have projects, which is our highest level of stuff. And I know I said last week and the week before that projects were like a end goal. They're not going to be useful. They're not core to the main project, so we're just going to avoid working on them as much as possible. I changed my mind. Projects are now a core feature and are essential to the rest of the project. I know that's like a complete 180, but once you see how projects work, I think you'll appreciate and understand why I made that 180 decision. So projects, you can create, I mean, you don't really need as many. Like, it really should, like, a project should be like a client that you're working for, or like, for example, I have 2 different schools, so I might have them as separate clients. They'll have some sort of hourly pay or some sort of thing associated with them. They might have a goal for how much per month you want to work. Then they'll have a list of tasks associated with them. And then they'll also have a list of lists, basically, and I'll explain this idea in a little bit. And task types will also be associated with projects. The days that you make progress on these things may eventually come into account. I don't see that coming into account just yet. And then also a list of accomplishments, which I talked about briefly last week, may also play a part in here. So now we can take something, for example, like this one. We take Colin task list out. Now we have a list of all the activities for this tasks for Colin. And then we can say in these tasks are associated with this, like the averages for these tasks will be associated with a task type. So let's look at this. So like projects, and this is just another view of the same thing with some sort of task manager system. Then we'll have a list of all these projects. The self quiz is another one that pops up again. Then logs will be each time that they've been completed. This is part of the task type thing. So you'll see, and then I might have some sort of repeating. There's a lot of these features that are going to end up getting cut for the first version or two. And then we'll have something that you can add these tasks to a list. So this is just another view of the same information. Task type, like quiz, self-quiz is a specific type. It's more generic, more broad. That's what has all of the logs associated with it, the averages, and the times completed. That's where we get our averages from. That's where we get our personal best. That's what PB stands for. And then we have something which is going to be specific. So this is our generic, repeatable. And then this is our specific log, which is very specific and it's completable. So you've got repeatable, completable. So this is our specific log. It's going to have a name like Unit 5 Web Quiz, Self Quiz. You can complete it. It's going to be part of a list. And then you're going to have a list of tasks and a list of task types. And so those things will be linked together. And I think that's how I'm going to do it right now. That's the best way I can think of it right now. So probably what I'm doing. And then having some sort of like college, like the project is going to have different types of lists so that you can create list templates with task types. Because if you have repeatable, like I have, for example, one of these schools has repeatable work. I know exactly what type of work I'm going to be doing. The specific types, the specific logs change, but the type of work stays the same. So that's what I'm saying here. Projects. So how does sessions play into this? So connecting this back. Sessions are going to be your start end times. Sessions are going to be linked to lists. And both of those things are going to be linked to projects. So this might make a little bit of sense. So sessions have a start end time. You're only going to work on one list during a session. And you can change that list during the session, but you're only going to be working on one list during a session. And that's how I'm going to organize it out, because I don't think there's a reason for sessions and session timing to be associated with more than one project. So here's kind of like more of very unorganized-ish way of looking at, I'm thinking, the data base like the data structure is going to look like. And I've been doing this for the past couple of days, so it's all fresh in my mind a little bit. So projects, color, title, hourly, some of this stuff isn't really going to be necessary. They're going to also be associated with sessions. That's how we're going to do our time tracking and reporting, analytics and stuff. Same thing with this. They're all project going to be associated with users, and then within projects we have sessions, we have tasks, task types, to-do lists. Lists are going to be variations. So this is some like very, very brief, not very like, this is just generic ideas I was thinking of for what the UI could look like for if I just wanted to create something to just fill out information in forms, because I'm thinking I'm going to start with just a form like view where I just fill out all the information just to make sure that I got the roots and backend stuff working, and then I'll work on actually making like it look decent and function. So being able to create projects, giving them a color, project name, hourly rate, that's all information you really need to create. And you don't even really, hourly rate is like technically optional. So then you'll be able to have a link to the project page. This is what I'm thinking project page might look like. So you'll have sessions, lists, tasks, task types, stats, and being able to edit this will all be a part of a project, because that's all the data associated with a project. So let's see. I didn't really finish, like this is going to be a lot of information for like sessions have so much going on now that I might have to like trim them down. So they're going to have a date associated with them. You can name the session, which is going to be interesting. Maybe the name of the session and the name of the list should be the same. I think sessions and lists are very closely related, but not completely related. So I don't know if I want to do that. But that actually might be something for me to look into, is connecting those ideas. Project is going to be associated with project, obviously. Then that's how the project is how we're going to attribute things like hourly rate and other stuff. List is going to be the type of list used, or the specific list used, because we're going to have different lists and like that sort of stuff. So you'll have list management and task management within that. The duration of how long the session was. Then we'll have more information, like for example, accomplishments. I think I might pop accomplishments out and have it be its own thing, and then be able to like search date frames. Because then if you have one list of accomplishments, this is something that I've discussed. Maybe I've discussed it in person, but I haven't discussed it here. When I create a invoice I use, and also I do a monthly review, I look back on a list of accomplishments. Being able to create like logs, simple things that I can see here, I can just copy this stuff, paste it in. So that's going to just save me a whole bunch of time when thinking about that. Having the tasks and task lists associated with it, and then links directly to those tasks and task types in the session will also be there. The amount of money earned for that session, which is also part of the reason why this is linked to a project. So then we have something like on task time, off task time. This is going to be like your in-between time. So that stuff also can be tracked here. Having like just normal notes can be also in sessions. So if you were to like press here, open up your lists. So lists, I am going to redesign this because I have a few different ideas for this. And I need to spend like a lot of time here in the like ideation phase, because there's just a lot to do. So lists are going to be creating a new list, and then giving tasks and task types to that list. I'm thinking this honestly could probably be tasks, lists, and task types could probably all be the same view, because of the way that I'm thinking they work together. So it's like, I'll show you where my inspiration came from this, with hopefully something that's, so we'll do this one. So tasks, so these are different lists of the same project. These are different tasks. And then in here, task types. So that's how I'm thinking of you organizing it. Then you can create new lists here. You can add a new task here, give it a task type and all that crap. So this is where I've drawn, this is a similar layout to Trello. This is a similar layout to like other programs. So this isn't just like I'm looking at this one app. But this is a really good, somewhat generic idea of task management within projects. So that's part of that. That's where I'm getting this idea from. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this week. I know part of me really wants to get started on programming, and I feel like I'm starting to spend too much time thinking about the ideas for this. But now that I've hit on this one, and it's going to be difficult enough to pull this off. So I think what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to spend more time in ideation, thinking about these ideas, making more sketches and all the rest of it, because this is just going to be the start of the project now. We can still use all of the work from our previous weeks. All of that still transfers over, so we don't have to worry about that. So that's nice, but I don't want to. There's two things going to run in parallel, and this is where leading into the next slide. Two things running in parallel: the design aspect of visual design, web design, and then also the functionality, back end, front end, making everything working together. I want these things to work side by side. Like I want to be able to create sketches, wireframes, use Figma and all the rest of it, while I'm also creating the data models, back end, all the roots and that stuff. And then get to a point where I will be able to merge the two into beautiful application we can play with. But I want to be able to do it one thing at a, so we'll start with one feature. Like for example, we have sessions right now. I think what we'll do is we'll do projects, and what we'll do is we'll start off being like, okay, not this week, maybe next week or in the future. Maybe next week, that might be the week that we do it. Is going to be project, designing the project page, designing how they're going to look, how feel, database, designing the database part of that too, programming it and having these things work together, which is why I've been taking these 2 online courses. Now I've been taking the JavaScript course for almost 2 years now, because it's like 75 hours worth of stuff and it's a lot of good information. And it's got a lot of the ideas of what I want to implement and use for this project. So I'm going to try finishing that this month, which means I'm going to need to spend about an hour on it a day, which is kind of a lot of time. But then also, I just finished a web design course. This is another web design course, but this one uses specifically Figma and some other stuff, and has very similar design process. So I'll be able to add Figma and be able to create better looking wireframes than what this probably took me like 2 or 3 hours to create these sketches. Using something like Figma, I'm sure that once I get the hang of it, I can work so much faster. So both of those things are going to be running in parallel, in addition to actually working on the project. So the courses themselves are going to take 2 hours a day, and then also spending time actually designing the thing, sketches, programming out the database stuff. So it's a lot to do. I'm going to just see how that goes. So that is all I have for you. Thank you so much for watching. Early Bird, thank you so much. And thank you to, talk to Dad, Mom, Justin, Jonah, Brian. All these people gave me great feedback. I'm still talking to them, and we'll get some more ideas. So I'll be doing that. So yeah, thank you so much. And I will catch you in the next one.